Welcome back to We'll Shift Dust. I'm Elysia, and I'm not here alone. Hi, Luke.
Hi, Elysia.
We are back to tackle episode 2 of season 2 of Silo, titled Order, which Luke will be happy to know was full of surprises for me as well.
Yeah, it's always nice. It's always nice when you, as the book reader, are taken by surprise as well.
So, Luke, can you remind people or fill in new listeners, what is our book spoiler policy?
So, Elysia has read all the books that go to make up the series Silo. I have read none of them. So, we will be talking about what's happened in previous episodes. We will be talking about what happened last season. But Elysia will protect my book innocence by giving no spoilers from the books ahead of where we've already gotten to.
Right.
So, once again, I remain the fount of all ignorance.
Right. So I can bring up things from the books that have already played out on screen. In this episode, it's merely going to be to say, by the way, that's from the book. I can't tell you more yet.
Teasing.
Teasing. But there is an extra spoiler cast that's going out a couple of days after this, where Abby has also read the books. We will be talking about a specific topic related to this episode, which I'll bring up more as we go through.
I bet it's the Pez dispenser. I bet you any money it's the Pez dispenser.
I mean, there is like half a book dedicated to that. No, the Pez dispenser is not in the book. But I think we will actually talk about it for another reason. So we are recording this ahead of time, by the way, because we have screeners this season. So that's why you're able to get this on the day that the episode drops. We will be, for that reason, recording separate episodes for community feedback. We had a really great time last season interacting with everyone in the community, with everyone's thoughts and theories. So we still definitely encourage you to send them in. You can send them to we'llshiftduspodcast@gmail.com, and you can talk to us on Discord and check us out, get in touch with us on social media. All those links are in the show notes. But just to assure people, we are not watching ahead of the episode that we're talking about for these episodes. So we've only seen, right now, Luke and I have only seen the first 2 episodes of the new season. So you can trust all of our speculation is genuine.
I've got to say, after watching this episode, it was really hard to fight the temptation to watch the next one.
I know. So, and I think we also have to throw out that there are, I know that these are going to be officially said on screen very soon. I don't know if you noticed the episode title for next week, but there are a couple pieces of lore that were revealed at Comic-Con that are not spoilery. They're just the labels for things that make it easier for us to talk about them. So I'm going to reveal that now, and we will be referring to these as we talk. And that is the fact, we know that there are multiple silos. We know that from last season. They are numbered, and the number for the silo in which this week's action takes place is 18. And we know that because we saw that on the hard drive last season, and we saw that on Bernard's key fob. And yes, we've been seeing that number around. The silo that we saw Juliette enter last week, next to it is silo 17. So it's going to be revealed on screen soon. We're just going to say that now because it makes us easier to talk about it. And then also, we're going to be referring to the man that Juliette met last week as Solo. Yep. Anything to add?
No, let's crack on with it.
All right. So I was thinking, by the way, before we get into the episode itself, last week we were questioning why the rebellions in these silos always seem to come from the down deep. But I was thinking about it this week, and do rebellions actually ever start at the top? Because that wouldn't be a rebellion then. They pretty much
that wouldn't be a rebellion. That would be a coup.
Yeah, true.
Which arguably is what Bernard has pulled off.
But he's the secret head of the silo anyway, so...
Yeah, but now he's the public-facing head of the silo as well.
Is that a coup? Because he's, like, just saying... He's just coming out of the closet as being in charge.
Well, I don't see anybody in a massive rush to organise a mayoral election, so until there is one, I'm calling it a coup.
Oh, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, I guess the fact that they refer to them as rebellions... They never start in the mids. They never start with the middle class rebellions, do they?
Well, generally speaking, rebellions don't start with people who are very poor because they're too busy
Right.
trying to
Just getting by.
survive. What generally happens is that successful rebellions tend to start when people's circumstances improve a little bit and they want to see them continue to improve, and they don't see a way that they can continue to improve with the current
Okay.
system.
Interesting. Well, I can't wait for the transcript to be released, by the way, so that I can count how many times they said the mines this episode. Did you notice that? It's the mines. Should have sent them
Yeah.
to the mines. Send them all to the mines.
Also, are you okay, Elysia? Because there was no Lucas,
I
there was
know.
no George.
Why are they keeping him from me? I mean, George. All right. Well, so, by the way, I also desperately need Patrick and Danny back. But so I have to shout out in our trailer breakdown episode, you were teasing me saying I kept bringing up George and why do I want George back and all that. And so Jeremy on Discord, he said, I finally just listened to your trailer episode and well, I'm sorry, but I had to. This is more for Luke, really
Oh yeah, no,
laughing.
that was awesome.
He says, I have a medical condition called overdrawitis. If I find something funny I've seen/heard, I have to draw it or I can't get it out of my head. And so we get a drawing that's an excellent drawing of a woman's arm opening a door that says creak. And inside, George is sitting on a couch holding a drink in one hand and the ducky Pez dispenser in the other. And it says, well, hello there, Elysia. What brings a girl like you to a silo like this?
It's a brilliant draw. It's a brilliant drawing.
It's really well done. Yeah,
Yeah, it's really well done.
So thank
thanks
you,
for that.
Jeremy. Oh yeah. Oh, so just about Lucas. Yeah, I do wonder. I'm going to talk about this more with Abby, but I do wonder if maybe they really did send him to the mines, and that's like how we're going to see the mines. But then show episode 3 better feature the mines and Lucas and Patrick and Danny like having some stupid conversation.
Well, like you said, that they keep mentioning the mines enough that we need to see them at some
Right.
point.
Right. Said
Yeah.
it so many times this week. All right. Well, let's get into the episode itself.
Your regularly scheduled breakdown will begin in 3, 2, 1.
All right. So this week's episode is season 2, episode 2, Order. And that episode title, it's about keeping order, not letting things get out of control, of course, but it's also about a new book that we get a glimpse of that we'll talk about a bit more. So this episode first aired Friday, November 22nd, 2024, and it was written by Fred Golan, who is a frequent collaborator with the showrunner Graham Yost. And the director was again Michael Dinner, who also directed episode 1. Luke, what were your overall thoughts in the episode?
I really liked this episode. I thought it covered a lot of ground. I thought it really developed, particularly Bernard as a character and Judge Meadows for that matter. You get to see a lot more of who Judge Meadows is and what's motivating her. And you find out the relationship between Bernard and Judge Meadows, which when it was revealed, I went, that makes sense, I was like, huh. But it was certainly not something I was expecting. I do have one major gripe with this episode in that Walker's agoraphobia seems to have completely disappeared as required by the plots. She's wandering about all over the place and she's taken all over the place, seemingly without any consequence. And I think that is, just to get it out of the way. I don't like it when shows have characters who have illnesses, disabilities, mental health conditions that sort of come and go and fade in and out as the plot requires them to, because that's just not how real life works.
Yeah.
So that was my one major gripe with the episode.
Yeah, no, I share that gripe. And I have to say, her agoraphobia does come from the books, and where it's a male character, but it doesn't matter. Same character in every other way. So Walker in the books, he does leave for similar reasons, basically. It's actually once. It's not to Walker communicates with Supply not by going directly, and he doesn't have like an ex-wife there or something, but he coordinates with Supply to get Juliette the right tape, and then leaves finally his workshop to go see the screens to watch her walk. But then after that, you do still see in the books that he still struggles with it. It doesn't like, just because you've made a big step forward with something you've been struggling with doesn't mean that it's now over.
Yeah, that it's now gone, that you are
Right.
cured, that you are in inverted commas cured.
Right.
So
I think
yeah,
up until the end, like you see that Walker prefers more confined spaces where he feels cozy and, gets nervous to walk through the cafeteria and all that stuff. So yeah, they kind of dropped the ball there on that. And that is also my one big gripe for this episode. But I promise we love the episode otherwise.
yeah. I mean, otherwise it was
Mhm.
a brilliant episode. But I think it is just worth. We're always coming from a place of love with these reviews, but when the show does drop the ball, it's important that we point it out as well. So we're not
Mhm.
just fanboying and fangirling.
Right. I can fanboy too. Yeah, so this episode, like I said, it definitely reflects book stuff in ways I can't talk about yet, but will in the spoiler cast. But it adds layers also to what I know from the books, like that speech or the whole thing about Bernard having a former shadow is not in the books. And I think that because Judge Meadows is not a character in the books. There's a Judge Pickens who's just kind of like a side character you meet later, but um yeah, so this episode had me sitting on the edge of my seat a lot more than the first one, I have to say. And there were a few actual gasps. So I seem to like the political intrigue more than the action in this show, personally.
Yeah, I think I'm there with you actually. I think we're on the same page there.
You know why that is?
Why?
Because we're nerds.
Well, yeah, there's really no denying that. So
I'm glad there's something for everybody.
yeah.
All right, so let's get into the episode itself. We're going to talk about one arc at a time. So that'll mean that we will talk about some scenes out of order versus the order that they occur in the show, but it's just easier to do it this way. Speaking of order, let's start with the order. So we see Bernard, Tim Robbins. He's alone in a room, and it's not the janitor's closet, but there is like a monitor that he's watching. And this room seems more tailored to personal surveillance. He's watching through Juliette's helmet cam as she discovers Silo 17 and the bodies spilling out of the airlocks. And he watches until she destroys her helmet, and then he opens a book labeled The Order and scans a section labeled "In the event of a failed cleaning, prepare for war." As an alarm goes off, a worried Bernard exits this new to viewers space, closing a circular door behind him and takes off on a run. So, did you get the idea that Bernard isn't surprised to see this other silo, but is surprised to see the dead people?
Yeah, and like the look of horror on Bernard's face, it's a really good bit of physical acting by Tim Robbins because Bernard is shook. This is a guy who knows what's going on, who is in command, who is in charge, and you see in that moment that all of that assurance, all of that sense of power is just gone, and like the look of horror on his face, and I think that's important. For Bernard's character because it makes him something more than a mustache twirling villain. Like,
Hmm.
you can disagree with what Bernard's doing, but you can't doubt his motivation is the best interest of the people living in Silo 18.
Mm-hmm.
And he has a conversation with with Judge Meadows about this later on in the episode. But yeah, I think it really adds something to Bernard's character. And is that room? Do we think Solo is in the same room, the equivalent room in Silo 17? Because it looked like it to me with
Well,
the circular door.
And the circular door with the eyes, the peephole, slit at the same sort of
Yeah,
level. And yes, I mean, I think that we can confirm it because also the other thing I pointed out for the episode one breakdown, I pointed out that you get a glimpse through this room where we see blinking machines through this sort of alcove to the side. We get a much better look at the equivalent in this silo of that same alcove. And now I can point out for people who don't spend a lot of time in IT, the what we see in the alcove are server closets. So it's computer servers in there.
Okay.
So this must be an IT somewhere, which makes sense because Bernard's there and he's the head of IT.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, if you want to keep the population calm and everything under control, maybe don't go with big, loud alarms telling people not to panic. Have you ever known a siren to be good?
Pump pump some, elevator music. Like,
Yeah,
everybody
just
calmly
some nice
proceed.
music rather than wow.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess, I can understand from the filmmaking perspective, it's to get the viewers frame in that mindset, that Bernard is freaking out because he sees these dead bodies. He's like, oh my God, that could happen to us. That could happen to us. That could happen to us. So that shows why, like, we are not shy about calling Bernard out for not being a good guy, but he does have a reason for the things that he does.
Yeah, I think with Bernard, like the phrase is the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Right.
Yeah.
And so what did you make of this book that he's looking at in this new hidey hole?
Okay, so we've got the pact and we've got the order, and I think it's important to establish that these are two different things.
Yes.
Meant for two different audiences.
Right.
So clearly the order is is the handbook for what's really going on.
Mm-hmm.
The pact is designed to keep everybody sort of on track, and yeah, it's sort of designed to keep everybody dorsal and sort of in their roles.
Right.
But the order doesn't give a lot of very good advice because it's just, in the event of a failed cleaning, prepare for war. You're screwed, basically.
Well, that line is straight from the book, actually.
Okay.
That line is straight from the book. The order is from the book. I'm reluctant to say too much about the order at this point, but Luke, you're a smart cookie. You are piecing it together already.
Yeah, but also really nice printed book. Like, as somebody that spent a lot of time around hardback books, that one was really well printed.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and for people who want me to be less coy about the pact and the order and how they relate, that's what the spoiler cast is going to be this week about. So I was paying attention. I paused several times to try to see what's the keypad code that he puts in as he leaves. And it looks like it definitely ends on an 8. It looks like it ended on a 3-8, but it feels like 18 would make more sense. But I don't know why. It could be any random code. It could be his. Maybe he once had.
Yeah.
Maybe his mom's birthday. We still don't know.
Maybe somebody's birthday. Yeah.
Yeah. We still don't know like anything about Bernard's private life. We don't know where he lives. We don't know anything about his family or if he has any friends or family now.
Well, we know that he has a kind of ex-work bestie in Judge Meadows.
Right.
Like,
we learned that this episode, yeah.
They were clearly close at one point. And I wouldn't be entirely shocked to find out later down the line that they were romantically involved at some point. There seemed to be a little bit of a frisson. There seemed to be a little bit of a frisson there.
Okay. Yeah, maybe. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, well, continuing forward, Bernard meets Sims, played by Common, on one of the bridges in the silo with a low-level panic spreading throughout, and Sims is upset that he couldn't find Bernard when everything started going sideways. So we know Sims does not know about the secret hidey hole. People are talking openly about rebellion, but he's already got the jackboots on the job, and Bernard tells Sims to implement an 8 p.m. emergency curfew, put the sheriff's deputies under judicial command, and watch Juliette's father. Bernard says he'll make a speech later that day. He says he needs to know what happened, but he knows what happened. If Sims will kindly detain the 2 names on his list, which we'll later learn are Martha and her ex-wife Carla, the woman from Supply who helped Martha set up Juliette with the good tape. So, yeah, do you want to remind people about the whole tape situation? Because that's really important this episode.
Yeah, so there are 2 types of tape. 2 types of heat tape. The good heat tape that IT uses to keep its servers and computers all nice and cool, and then there's the heat tape everybody else uses, including in the Down Deep, and that's the bad heat tape, and it's also used for the cleaning to secure the suit around the wrist and ankles, and that's
well, I think it's only used for that, the bad tape.
Oh, I thought it was you. They used it in the down. I thought they used it in the down
No,
deep
the
as
down
well.
deep uses the good tape because the good tape is actually made to like seal machines and with the things it's
Ah,
meant to be for.
oh,
The shitty heat tape, as it kept being called last season, is made to fall apart outside so that cleaners die. That's all it's for.
okay,
Yeah.
okay. Thanks for clarifying that. So yeah, so Juliette had the good heat tape, which is why she was able to make it over the hill to Silo 17.
Yeah. Right, exactly. Yeah, so there's a lot of tape talk this episode we'll be talking about as we go along, including what the spy work with those two detainees. But first, I have to pull a Paul Billings, Chinaza Uche, and ask, but what about the pact? So Billings, his head is spinning from what just happened during the cleaning, and he's none too happy about all of the pact violations going on. Sims says it's only temporary, and Billings should keep himself busy moving into the recently vacated sheriff's apartment. They have to pave the way back to normalcy by acting coolly and calmly themselves. Billings asks Sims for his statement on the cleaning, and Sims says Bernard believed Juliette broke the relic laws. He led her to the cornfield to keep the arrest from disrupting the rest of the silo. And once he confronted her about the relics, she said she wanted to go outside, and Sims saw it. And then she ran, and the raiders chased her down. End of statement. Do you think Billings believes any of this?
No, because Billings asks a very pertinent question, which is if she said she wanted to go outside, why did she run?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think Billings believes any of this. And also, we know that Billings is in a state of confusion anyway because he saw the Georgia tourist book
Right.
last season. So I'm not sure Billings knows what to think about anything at this
Yeah.
point. And oh, by the way, there's no way I'm moving into that sheriff's apartment. Like the last two of them have both been sent out to clean. There is no way I'm moving into that apartment right now.
Yeah.
Um,
They've definitely replaced the camera, but when he burned the book there, the camera was broken because Juliette broke it.
yeah, yeah.
So they did not see him find the book and burn it.
Also, is it just me, or do you think his syndrome is getting worse?
Oh, I was
Because
going
he,
to say the opposite because they zoomed in on Billings' hand when Sims said we have to stay calm, and it showed his hand was quite calm actually.
no, but he's sitting there with his right hand over his left to stop
Yeah,
it
he was holding it, but he always
moving.
does that. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know. I thought that it was showing why I thought that the point of that was to like give us the idea like, okay, so Sims is telling Billings to be calm, but who's more likely to act coolly and collectedly out of those two?
It's true. That's true. And I do like the snarking. Is there any other parts of the pack that Bernard wants us to ignore?
Yeah. Oh, he's in a
Like,
calling out mood. Yeah.
yeah, like he put some real snark behind that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yes, and he also called out you said about why did she run if she said she wanted to go outside and Sim said, "Oh, she must have changed her mind." Like, "Okay, dude." But he also points out that Bernard destroyed the red level relic and that's the hard drive that he's referring to. That Bernard confiscated and destroyed at the end of last season and Sim says, "For the safety of the silo." So yeah, he's noticing stuff. He's like in his head, I imagine like a mental checklist of like, hmm, these things are
Yeah,
adding up.
I got the feeling that scene he's moving more towards the Juliet end of the Sims-Nard scale. He's still very much in the middle, but maybe just a tiny bit
Hmm.
more towards the Juliet end of the Sims-Nard scale.
I have to shout out the actor Chinaza Uche. Just like the way he delivered alone the line, "She walked over the hill." Like, oh, he's just so good. He's such a good
Yeah,
actor. And
he's got very little to do, but he communicates a lot with it.
oh, really? Oh, I think he has a lot to do. But I think he
I
this
meant sort
does
of in
require.
this episode, he doesn't have much.
Hmm. Yeah, but I think
Yeah,
this character requires like subtlety in the acting, and he really is very deft with that.
he
Um,
is.
and he's likable. Like I know you like Billings for you like the type of character that he is. That's not normally the type of character I'm so into, but Chinaza Uchi just makes him so likable that he's one of my favorite characters too in the show.
Yeah,
In the book, he's a stronger person in the show than the book.
yeah. I think you said last season that
Hmm.
he's a much more sort of filled out, rounded character in the show than he is in the
Yeah,
book.
he also has more of a backbone. He's kind of more obsequious in the books. So
Okay.
Okay, let's pause here to take a quick break, and then we'll be back to talk about what's going on in the Down Deep.
Why choose a Sleep Number smart bed?
Can I make my side softer?
Can I make my side firmer? Can we sleep cooler?
Sleep Number does that. Cools up to 8 times faster and lets you choose your ideal comfort on either side, your Sleep Number setting. And now, during our Black Friday sale, save 50% on the Sleep Number limited edition smart bed, plus free home delivery when you add a base. And Cyber Monday. To find a store near you, visit sleepnumber.com.
Okay, well, speaking of backbone, we've got some rumblings from the deep. Chaos reigns in the Down Deep cafeteria as the alarm goes off. Deputy Hank, played by Billy Postlethwaite?
Postlethwaite? Yeah, almost. Postlethwaite.
What's the difference between what I said and what you said?
Okay, yeah, no, you got it this time. You got it this time. You got it. I'm just teasing you at this point. Postlethwaite.
Okay, so Deputy Hank, played by that actor, tries to calm things down and stop people from cutting the speakers to shut off the announcements, but fails miserably. They've all seen Juliette walk over the hill, and they think that means it's safe, and some people even want to go further. The crowd doesn't quiet down until Knox, played by Shane McRae, takes over corralling them, but he tells Hank to shut the fuck up and listen to the people. He calls Juliette one of their own, to which Shirley calls out, "Then why the fuck did you turn her in?" Knox admits that he did that and says he did it to protect the rest of them. They are looking for any excuse to tear their homes apart because they think they're dumb animals and they have to show them. But he's cut off by Shirley, who says they need to show them by cutting off the power and shutting down the silo. Knox says that's an extreme measure they can only pull once, so they better make sure they pick the right moment, and he doesn't think that moment is now yet. Things continue to get more heated until Martha sprays the crowd down with a fire hose. As Shirley storms out, Knox tells her to stop before she sets off the tinderbox. She asks if that's a command as head of mechanical, and he says yes. So yeah, we already did our Martha complaints. We'll let that rest. You know, she should not be miraculously cured, but okay, moving forward. That's the way it is in the show from now on. So Knox is obviously on our shit list for the reasons that Shirley calls out directly, but Shirley's also talking some dangerous stuff. So is he also kind of right in a way to tell her to shut up?
Yeah, I mean, I think Knox is on your shit list more than he's on mine because
Okay, you like order too.
Because I kind of agree with Knox. He really didn't have a choice but to turn Juliette in. The Raiders were going to find her anyway, sooner or later, because that's just the nature of the silo. You can hide, but you can't run. And actually, I have a lot of respect for Knox. Coming out of this scene because he's just trying to make sure that none of his people get hurt, and he's also trying to keep things together in the silo. And I do like the that's a thing we can do once, because he's absolutely right. Like, you can only shut the silo down once, and there's no guarantee that when you do that you'll be able to turn everything back on again either. So it's a really dangerous thing to do.
Yeah.
And also I like the, is that an order? Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, just yeah, I have a lot more respect for Knox after this little scene.
So, yeah, my question though is, by telling Shirley to shut up, like when you just tell someone to shut up, that can often backfire, and Shirley seems to really have the personality that would make that happen, you know? Like, I understand he's trying to keep things under control, but that just makes her feel more frustrated and like she's not being heard. Don't you think it could make the situation worse?
Yeah, no, that's true. But like Knox has, there are probably several hundred people in the Down Deep, and like, things are really starting to fall apart. So
yeah,
he probably does. Like, I agree with you that that's what Shirley is going to do, but he probably doesn't have the time or inclination to do anything else. And also, Knox is an authority figure. He's used to people doing what he tells them to do. And he's used to the idea that people trust him to know what he's doing. So Yeah,
Yeah.
I take your point, and you're right. But I think that's just the way Knox. That's the way those two personalities interact with each
Yeah.
other, basically.
He has BDE, big director of mechanical energy.
He does, yeah.
Um, it did, by the way. I just recently finally watched the Metropolis, this famous, one of the first sci-fi films from 1927. I think it's the first feature-length one, maybe. But yeah, it reminded me of that, in where that it's ostensibly Metropolis is ostensibly like a pro-communist film, although I have questions about that. But they say at one point, the workers, they want to rebel, and they destroy the machines, and then they're like, by destroying the machines, you destroy yourself. And I guess there's some truth to that. Like, if they turn off the silo, that means, it's not working for them either, and they're all stuck in this underground giant bunker with everything
Yeah, and
dying.
like I say, given what happened with the turbine last season, there's no guarantee that once you switch stuff off, you'll be able to safely switch it back on.
Yeah, well, yeah, that is a question, because wasn't there the turbine works differently in the show versus the book, but I recall Juliette saying something like you couldn't turn it off all the way or for too long. This is why they had to work quickly, because of the mechanics of yeah, again,
Yeah,
we're not mechanics on this podcast.
yeah.
We're sorry about that.
I just took
Yeah.
from it that if you turn it off, you might not be able to safely turn it back on.
Oh, no, I thought it was like they had a limited time they could turn it off. But anyway, yeah, it could be detrimental. But what do you think is the distance because Knox was saying to Hank, like, shut up and listen to the people, but Shirley's taking a step further. How far apart do you think Knox and Shirley really are?
Was he saying? Was he telling Hank to shut up
Yes.
and listen to
Yes.
the people, or was he telling
He
the people to shut up and listen
and
to
I
Hank?
did not insert the F word. That was his. He
Okay,
said, yeah, he said, shut the fuck up and listen to the people.
okay.
Yeah.
I thought he said listen to these people talking about Hank.
No, no, no. He was telling Hank to shut up and listen to. He said they
Okay.
saw Juliet walk over the hill, and we have to show them. And then Shirley's like, "Let's show them by turning off the machines." And he's like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa,
Whoa, whoa, whoa,
whoa!"
whoa, whoa. Also, shout out to Billy Postlethwaite this episode, because never has a guy looked more hangdog, never has a guy looked more
Mm,
put upon and just wanting to be left alone
yeah,
than Hank in this episode. And also, it's the first time I've looked at him and thought, yeah, you actually look quite a bit like your dad. I can see Pete Postlethwaite in
yeah.
him in this performance.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. I think we should call it like the Hank to Simsnard scale, because like especially the TV show version of Hank has never done a thing wrong.
he
I
just wants to be left alone.
Well, I love, like, because when people are like, Juliet went outside, I want to go outside. He's like, please. He's like putting his fingers in his ears, like, la, 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 la. You didn't say that. You didn't say that. He's trying so hard. But question though, where would you put Knox currently on the Julie Hank to Simsnard scale?
I would put him closer to the Julie Hank
Uh-huh.
end
Okay.
of the Simpsons scale. I think Knox is not a bad guy. He's a good guy who has been asked to be the boss, to be the big director of mechanical energy.
Mm-hmm.
And he's doing the best he can. And he didn't sell Juliet out because he was mean or vindictive. I agree with him.
Yeah. What about Shirley? Where would you put Shirley on that scale?
Oh, Shirley's not on that scale. Shirley's just all like piss and vinegar. Like
She's an anarchist. She's
yeah,
made her own scale.
Yeah,
She's on the Shirley scale of 1.
She just wants to break the scale, man. She doesn't have time for your rules.
Break the wheel.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So I actually would put Billings closer to Julie Hank than I would put Knox. And with Knox and Shirley, it's hard for me to, because I do think obviously Knox is in the coming from the right place. But it's more like, I think Bernard is coming from the right place. And I'm not saying he's Bernard. Just to make that clear up front. But just in the way of sometimes you're trying so hard to do something that you don't notice what lines you're stepping across. And I feel like Billings doesn't always follow his own rules, but he's always thinking about what lines he's crossing. And I think because he's always haunted by that time he beat up the kid who also had the syndrome as a teenager. And he's
Yeah,
like, I can't cross the line like that again.
yeah. I mean, like I say, I think Knox is just trying to get from one day to the next and keep the silo
Yeah.
running and keep everybody alive and sort of pointed in the same direction.
Yeah.
Like I don't think it's that he's not considering the lines he's crossing. It's just from his point of view, he's never had time to stop and not be Knox, not be not be big Department of Mechanical Energy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I do have to say that things are escalating more quickly in the show than the book, but that makes sense. Like they take the time to build out the characters sideways, but then the action kind of has to,
Yeah.
like we've got to move forward. I loved there was when Shirley calls out Knox, there was a side eye reaction from one of the women in the crowd. I'm gonna paste that picture in the show notes. I thought it was really funny. She's like, "Oh."
Also, I love Knox's haircut. Like
Okay.
for
Yeah.
for people who are in the down deep and mechanical, they pay a lot of attention to personal grooming, don't they? Like
Mhm.
Knox has a really badass haircut. I like
Yeah.
that haircut.
Well, it is funny because it is like they have the tattoos down there, which you don't see so much in the rest of the silo. It's
Yeah,
they are everyone peacocks in their own ways.
yeah,
Um, One thing I found interesting is that Knox, he says they think we're dumb animals. He says about, I guess judicial and the up top and all that. It just as I was rewatching that, it made me think: is this what populism looks like? Like that,
yeah,
it just saying the elites, they think that you are stupid, but
yeah.
I
And I mean, bear in mind for the listeners, we are watching this the
right,
week of the American presidential election.
right.
So
And as you can
yeah.
imagine, Luke and I are thrilled with the results.
Oh, just yeah, great.
Yeah, but it does, and that is a real life case where, you have somebody saying like, "Oh, they think that you're dumb, so let's hate them."
Yeah.
But
No,
then yeah.
you're absolutely right. And the thing is, it works because
Mhm.
what Knox is saying is to some extent true.
Right.
You could find examples. People in the up top of the silo do look down,
Mhm.
literally and metaphorically,
Sure,
on the
yeah.
people in the down deep.
Yeah, no, it is truth what he's saying, but then on the other hand, like this anti-elitism
Yeah.
it gets dangerous because when it starts pushing people to dismiss reason.
Yeah, because like Sims has like this snarky comment of, then they must be loving this in the down deep
Right.
when he's talking to Bernard. So
Right.
yeah, there
And they're
definitely is
panicking
that.
down there too, yeah.
Yeah, there definitely is that element of snobbery.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah,
No, both are true where it's,
yeah,
they maybe are viewing people that way, but also they do have more information. And that's what it comes down to for me. I'm always like, just communicate all the things.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Transparency.
yeah,
But then, yeah, obviously, at this point, if like they were suddenly to just tell people the truth about there being other silos out there, I can see that would be bad news.
yeah.
But
Like that,
how did we?
you got to figure out a way to tell people about this
Mhm.
stuff.
But how do we get to this situation where
Yeah,
can only maintain order by lying to people?
yeah, and I mean, I think that's like one of the themes at the heart of the show is this idea that their whole society is built on lies.
Mhm.
But those lies exist for a reason. And it's
Mhm.
like how long can the dangers outside of the silo justify lying to the people inside of the silo?
Right. Yep. Yep. Okay. So, moving forward, later, Shirley frets in Martha's workshop. She, of course, read the note Martha sent up with the hush puppies in the season finale. They're all good in supply, it said. We know this is about them swapping out the shitty heat tape made to break down during cleaning so the person inside the suit would die, with the good tape from mechanical made to actually seal important machines and all that we talked about earlier. But Shirley is now piecing that together too, with the things that she's seen and overheard this season and last. Martha says, good tape or no, there's no way Juliette survived, because of course, as far as they know, where could she possibly go before she ran out of oxygen? Walker just wants to be alone, but Shirley says it's not enough to just mourn, and Hank arrives to arrest Walker as his new boss, Judicial, commands. But he's really nice about it, of course. He places her in a cell with her ex, Carla, and they talk about the heat tape. Carla wants to take the blame herself because clearly it would be traced to her and leave Martha out of it. Martha says they should just keep their mouths shut, but Carla says they'll find out anyway, or just find someone to denounce them so that they can be sent to the mines or outside regardless. Carla is hoping that by fessing up, she can prevent them from denying what happened. Martha says they'll be taken out sooner or later. At least they could go out together. Little do they know, a camera is recording their entire interaction. Later, after the speech we'll talk about shortly, Hank comes back and says Judicial has their explanation for the tape now, referring to the speech, but little does he know also. And he says that the two women are free to go, much to their confusion. So we'll talk about what Bernard says in the speech in a bit, but just pointing out now that these two obviously know that's all bullshit. Any thoughts on this interaction?
Well, I did sort of like the fact that they were literally discussing a prisoner's dilemma in a prison. That was a little bit on the nose. The prisoner's dilemma is if you put two prisoners in a cell, the only way the police can convict either of them of a crime is if one implicates the other. If they both stay silent, the police can't do anything. But neither prisoner can communicate clearly to the other, so they both have an incentive to rat the other one out, or do they both stay silent? So I like the idea that it was a prisoner's dilemma in a prison. I thought
as soon as they put them in the same cell, I was like,
yeah,
that's suspicious.
That's suspicious. Also, I wonder whether whether Bernard was watching that conversation and whether or not that was like inspiration for the speech.
Yeah. But what about sorry.
Because it seemed like that conversation obviously took place before Bernard gave his speech, so I wonder whether he was watching it, and I wonder whether he thought, maybe if I just fess up to the tape, that will sort of explain the whole thing.
Yeah.
So I thought that was kind of interesting, and like I said, I love Hank in this episode. Just the if you need anything, just yell until somebody comes.
He's a lovable character.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a good point about him having watched beforehand, because also they, Martha insists, like, let's just not say anything. And so I guess that satisfies him. He's like, oh, well, if I let them go, they're just going to not say anything because they don't want to die. And they understand that that's how it works. But what about the interaction before that between Martha and Shirley? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, like Harriet Walter, really good actor. She really does get the depth of Walker's grief over Juliette's presumed death. It really does come out, and also the actress playing Shirley, she just like takes it down a notch because she was just sort of lost in her own sense of rage and grief at Juliette. She hadn't really considered Walker's feelings in that moment. So there's a really nice sort of touching quality to that scene.
Yeah. I feel like Martha's the only one who can, keep Shirley at least a bit in check for now. We'll see how long that holds.
Yeah.
So when I rewatched the episode, I put the audio description on, and I just had to note, by the way, thank you, Apple, for including that in screeners. That's so rare. But I just wanted to note that the AD calls out a character named Teddy, who's played by Olatunji Ayofe. And Teddy, I had to look him up because I didn't really remember him. It's a black guy with short dreads, and he's staring at Martha right after she's arrested. And he was in season 1 of the show as well, but I didn't really remember him because he's someone who was constantly in the background of Mechanical, and he had a few lines. But it seems like he's becoming more important this season. We'll see him again later with Shirley. But yeah, so wanted to call that out. Also, yeah, poor Hank in his thankless job. He's like sent to rustle everybody up to make sure they hear Bernard's speech. He's like, first they wanted them all inside, now they want them all outside. Poor Hank. Oh. But I have to ask, why did Juliette not tell Walker about the cameras when she was down there last season?
Yeah, again, communication, people,
I know.
communication.
Please. Do you think Martha and Carla are going to rekindle things?
Oh, yeah. But I kind of hope so, and then on the other hand, I kind of hope not, because no couple in this show gets a happy ending.
Maybe they'll be happier if they're apart.
Yeah, so like they may be happier together, but the chances of survival are considerably better if they don't reconcile. But that scene where they hold hands, really sweetly done.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, my question is, why did they break up in the first place? And why didn't they see each other for so many years? Like, there's a story there that we still haven't heard. Well,
yeah, I mean, we don't have enough information at the moment, but I think that's something they'll come back to, hopefully.
Yeah. Well, so speaking of that Teddy guy, who's apparently important, so pay attention. He goes and meets Shirley, who's played by Remy Milner, by the way, and others in a tunnel, and he updates them on Walker's arrest. And Shirley shares what she's been putting together about the heat tape incident, and Shirley thinks they can get Walker to tell people what she knows. Which I'm like, come on, you think Walker's going to tell people about the heat tape? She didn't even want Shirley to know about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think Shirley has thought this all the way through. I'm not sure Shirley has ever thought anything all the way through. But
no, that's true.
Yeah.
The tunnel they're meeting in, it's covered in graffiti. I don't know, like, if this is meant to be the tunnel to the digger room or a different tunnel. I guess it doesn't matter. I guess if it's the one to the digger room, they're behind that "Don't Pass Here" sign, which I guess is a good place to gather.
Yeah, I took it to be the one to the digger room.
Yeah, that makes sense. So in the meantime, Knox goes to see an old friend played by George Robinson, who seems to be the overseer of some sort of metal shop in the Down Deep. He seems to have a sort of loyalty to Knox because Knox's father helped him in some vague but very important way in the past. But when Knox asks him to promise not to make weapons for anyone, he seems, I don't know, somewhat reluctant. Did you get that?
Yeah, he definitely paused there for a second. Like, yeah, I sort of take this as sort of the Silo's blacksmith, sort of its metal working shop. Also, the guy's in a powered wheelchair, and next time I get a new wheelchair, I want his kind of steampunk-esque powered wheelchair. That is very, very cool. I didn't have time to check this. And you probably didn't look it up either. But do we know if the actor is actually disabled? Because if he isn't, he does a very convincing.
No, he is.
Oh, he is. Okay.
I've seen him in other things as well. Most notably, Sex Ed on Netflix.
Okay, I haven't seen that.
Yeah, and his name, they don't say his name this episode, but I looked him up on IMDb, and so I know the name of this character is Mark Chambers. So presumably he's going to be back as well, because he, as well as that guy who plays Teddy, they were both in the first batch of names in the credits, if that makes sense. Anyway, it seems to be those are like more recurring characters.
Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love the steampunk powered chair. I want one of those.
Yeah, and he so first of all, it was interesting to me that this is apparently not considered part of Mechanical, because when Knox walks in, he's like, we told you, scum from Mechanical, to stay out of here. And I guess they're differentiating more in the show versus the book, and I hope that makes mechanics happy.
Yeah. Why does everybody look down on Mechanical? It's not like you've got it so good in the metalworking workshop there.
Yeah, no, I think, I guess maybe you always just look down, but yeah. I mean, I presume that's part of the Down Deep too.
Yeah, I hope we find out more about Knox's dad. That was a really interesting little throwaway line.
Yeah, he says, "I wouldn't have made it out except for your dad." So out of where? Out of mechanical? Out of the mines? Does this have to do with him being a wheelchair user? What did you make of that line?
I'm not sure. I mean, like, I had the same sort of three thought process that you just outlined there. I don't think we have enough information to tell, but it's interesting that like people with the syndrome are are shunned, are sort of pushed out to the
Mm,
margins of silo society, and yet this guy seems to be in charge of his own little section within the silo. So the
yeah.
silo's attitude towards illness and disability, I think we need to find out more about that at some point.
Well, here's what how I would clarify that how that works in my own head is first of all, they are further because they're in the down deep. They always are kind of left to their own devices to do things their way more. Um, but also, my thought is that the syndrome apparently also has mental effects,
Oh,
or at least
okay.
that's what they say. Or so that is their excuse for not letting people have certain jobs. But yeah, again, I think that there's less supervision of that sort of thing downstairs in mechanical. Although we did see further up in the silo, like more toward like the up top mids, we saw people carrying someone on a wheelchair, but we don't know where that person came from or what their job
Well,
is or
yeah, where they
whatever.
were going or who they were. Yeah.
Right, right. He says, so yeah, I'm just going to call him Mark because that's apparently the character's name. Mark says they need us more than we need them, though he admits that it feels different this time. So I'm wondering, I'm suspecting, I don't know. I don't know if he's going to end up on Knox's side of things when it comes to time to make weapons.
Yeah, no, he definitely he nodded. He did make that promise, but he certainly paused, and we don't find out what the second. Knox asks
Right.
him for two things, and we don't find out what the second one was.
Yeah, he leans in and he's like, "There's a second thing," and he leans in like he's about to whisper it to him, and then it cuts.
Yeah.
And we're going to cut also right here for a quick commercial break. Be right back. Okay, so we're back and we're coping just with Dr. Daddy Peter Nichols, played by Ian Glenn. So he's Juliette's father, and his daughter's just been sent out to clean. And we find him quietly sitting alone in the cafeteria, watching the screen long after everyone else has gone. And he's interrupted by a nurse who needs his help resetting an infant's dislocated elbow. And so he goes back to the nursery and dives into his work as cheerfully as ever. So, yeah, Dr. Nichols, a level 10 expert on masking emotions.
Yeah, definitely. I kind of just got the sense that this scene was there just to remind the audience that Juliette has a father, and this is him, and he's the doctor, and yeah, he's just there. And also, I think we see one of the goons from Judicial doing what Bernard told them to, which is just to sort of watch him.
Watch him. Yeah.
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 So yeah, I just think that scene was there to remind us who this character is, why they're important.
Yeah, so the AD also emphasized that there is a tall, slender man. We only see his back, by the way. He seems to be a janitor, and he's watching Nichols and Nurse Alice as they leave the cafeteria. And so, Nurse Alice, played by Helene Maksoud, we saw that character last season. And after episode 3, we talked about how it looked like she might actually be spying on Dr. Nichols because she was like hovering around looking through a window.
So we've got a
So
spy spying on a spy.
yeah, could be, could be. I'm presuming that they replaced the cameras that were missing in there by now too.
Yeah, presumably, yeah.
Yeah, because Nichols is a top surveillance target for sure at this point. Yeah, but I just Nurse Alice always gives me sinister feelings for some reason. And like I was even thinking really dark thoughts about this. Like, the doctor asks the baby, like, "Oh wow, you have a dislocated elbow. How did
How
you
did you
do
do that?
this?"
Yeah.
So I'm having dark thoughts about Nurse Alice. And then also she's like, "Oh, I'll hold the baby." And he holds the baby to himself. That could be because he doesn't trust her, but it could also just be to comfort himself because it's a little girl and he was
Yeah.
probably thinking about holding
Also,
Juliet.
we saw Mayor Johns' little hat. that she always knitted for the babies.
Hmm.
It was wearing one of the little hats.
Nobody's getting those hats anymore.
Nobody's getting those hats anymore.
Oh. So, speaking of sobering twists, jumping back a bit, Judge Mary Meadows, played by Tanya Moody, is woken up earlier in the episode by the alarm, and she learns from Carl, Nari Blair Mangatz, the guard at her front door, about Juliette's failed cleaning. Later, she pours herself the usual liquid breakfast, a screwdriver mixed drink, but when her judicial aide, Sharon, played by Taj Kandula, tells her Juliette walked over the hill, Meadows changes her mind and pours the drink down the sink and grabs a glass of water instead, looking stupefied. What now, Bernard? She asks the empty room. She later tells Bernard she's quit drinking today. When he shows up to talk about the shit that's hitting the fan, he's surprisingly open with Meadows as they discuss the heat tape fiasco that led to Juliette crossing the hill. Meadows says someone was going to figure the tape thing out eventually and notices Bernard is frightened. He tells her what Juliette saw, the bodies spilling out of the other silo, and says he's worried the same thing will happen here. Meadows asks if his beloved Order, that book we saw him reading in the beginning, doesn't tell him what to do if someone walks over the hill. And he says the founders don't seem to have taken that possibility into account. He wants Meadows, who he reveals was his former shadow, to come stand behind him during his planned speech as a show of solidarity. He tries to bribe her cooperation, offering her a bigger apartment, more relics. She tells him she feels like a fraud, and pulling out a copy of the book, The Wizard of Oz, the only thing she wants is a balloon to fly away. But Meadows does show up for the speech, and after she says she will help Bernard, in return, she wants a suit made with the good tape so she can walk away and have the same chance Juliette had and end things on her own terms. So first of all, nothing but respect for her when she tried to shut the door in Bernard's face when he showed up.
Yeah.
And she says, "I'd make you a drink, but I don't want you to stay that long."
also really good acting of somebody with a ferocious hangover in that first meeting. Yeah, I mean Meadows, I think, is one of the most sort of enigmatic characters in the whole show. You really don't get, and this is why I really enjoyed this episode, because you get a much better sense of who she is, who she was, and sort of what motivates her. When she was describing, she describes to Bernard the story of the Wizard of Oz, and I wondered when she was describing that, was she talking about herself? Was she talking about Bernard? Or was she talking about
she was talking
both
about
of them?
herself. Because
Yeah,
he said, "You're calling me a fraud?" She says, "No, I'm calling myself a fraud."
Yeah, but it struck me she was also. You could also say the same thing about Bernard as well.
Oh, even more so. Yeah, perhaps.
Yeah.
Yeah. Love The Wizard of Oz. Shout out, by the way. Shout out to Agatha and Wicked. It's Wizard of Oz season, apparently. Yeah. I do you think that he seemed unnerved that she stopped drinking? Like, I was wondering if, he's worried
I
that
think
makes him more...
I think he was surprised.
Hmm.
I'm not sure he was unnerved. I can definitely see where you're coming from when you say unnerved. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
I was wondering if that made him worry that she would be more difficult to control, because we know, like, with Gloria from last season, and she had her quote unquote medicine, that it seems like Bernard thinks, oh, drug them and keep them out of the way. That potentially.
Yeah, but it also sounded like Bernard regretted the fact it didn't sound like Bernard, like, basically says nobody else could shadow me. I never trusted anybody else. I never thought anybody else could do the job. So there's a level of respect there that I've not seen Bernard have for anybody else, including Sims. Like, there's a sense that he thinks there was a point in time where she could have carried the weight of the responsibility that Bernard has sort of put on himself.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he keeps asking her about a secret she seems to have been keeping for 25 years. Presumably this has to do with what made her stop being Bernard's shadow. Do you have any thoughts on what that might be about?
Well, I thought the secret was was to do with the virtual reality display in the helmets for the cleaning.
I mean, he knows about that.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. She might be the only other person in the silo in on the secret.
Sure, I'm sure she knows that, but she's keeping a secret from him for 25 years, he said.
Oh, did he?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I hadn't read it like that. Okay, that's interesting. I'll have to go back and watch that again then.
Yeah, he said, go ahead, keep your secret. By the way, finding out she was his shadow was my biggest gasp moment of the episode.
See, that's not in that nothing like that is in the book then.
No, well, like I said, her character's not even, I mean, there is a judge, but not like a different name, not at all, none of this stuff. Judicial plays a much bigger role in the TV show, which makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think at this point, obviously they are getting back into the circle of trust later in the episode. But at this point, she's like, are you ordering me to come stand behind you? I like how she points out, he's like, I'd like you to be behind you. And she's like, behind you. I snorted out with laughter because of course he would put it like that. But yeah, he says, with the lives of 10,000 people at risk, I didn't think I'd have to order you. So I guess he did shame her a little bit with that comment.
A little bit, yeah.
And I was just gasping through this scene on the first watch because, like, she knows everything. He's like, oh my God, he's talking about the tape. Oh my God, he's talking about the other silo. But he says that it was a mistake not to send Juliette to the mines as soon as she stole that tape. And I guess the idea behind that would be to shut her up. But isn't part of the problem, part of the reason why everyone's piecing together the tape thing is because of that outsized reaction? So he ended up taking the tape situation and just, instead of just like letting it go and being like, oh, so you had the wrong tape, he called a lot more attention to it.
It's like the classic Greek tragedy, you bring on the thing there's the thing you fear, and your own actions and your own overreaction brings about the thing you're most worried about.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because even Carla, when Martha showed up, she's like, isn't that about that freaking heat tape?
Yeah.
All right. Well, this brings us to the speech. So Bernard tells the people of the silo that Juliette died a hero. She was testing a new type of tape, a miraculous advance in science. She's totally dead anyway, of course, but what an advance in the fight to reclaim the outside. And hecklers, who we later find out were hired, shout out things like, she's a traitor, she's alive, and it's impossible, so that Bernard can lay those fears to rest. Meadows steps forward publicly to thank Mayor Holland for this exciting development and commends him for his exemplary leadership. And she announces everyone will get 5 credits to celebrate, which I think giving people money shuts them up nicely. But Shirley interrupts to yell out the truth about the tape. A raider attempts to arrest Shirley, but Knox intercedes, says Shirley's just drunk and upset, and gets Hank to vouch for her. And they say they'll escort her home and keep an eye on her. And when she storms off, Hank sends Cooper, played by Matt Gomez Hidaka, to follow her. So what did you think of the speech?
The speech is the bit of the episode that made me gasp, because it's like, you, Bernard, you brilliant
bastard.
You brilliant bastard. That's amazing. Because I didn't know what Bernard was going to say, and it's like, you know what? That story's crap. But it kind of it hangs together. It makes sense. Mm-hmm. It's like what Meadows said later on. Yeah. It did what it needed you. It was ridiculous, but it did what he needed it to do in the moment.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, actually, I underestimated you, Bernard. You're actually a lot better at this political stuff than even you thought you were.
Do you think it worked, or do you think Shirley disrupted that?
Well, it's kind of like Bernard says to Sims later on. It probably bought them some time. No more than that. But,
yeah,
they're kind of in the situation where you just have to get from one day to the next.
Mm-hmm. I was thinking, by the way, it's funny that we rarely use Bernard's last name, both us and we rarely use it because the show rarely uses it. But for the other characters, we're often referring to them by their last names. And it's really funny because Bernard, it's almost like Bernard's trying to cultivate this cozy personality.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I'm just everybody's friend. Doing nothing nefarious here.
Yeah. And
Mm.
like the thing is, when he's giving the speech, he is a little bit awkward at the start, but it's a really good bit of acting by Tim Robbins, because Bernard is not good at public speaking, but he kind of gets into it, and having the fake hecklers, he uses them really well as a prop.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I loved, by the way, we had this I am Spartacus moment where the raider asked Shirley, "What is your name?" She says, "Juliette Nichols." And I expected other people to be like, "I am Juliette Nichols. I am."
It's like, Shirley, I love you, but just for once, get out of your own way,
Yeah.
please.
But I also loved Knox's reaction to the raider. He's like, "Oh, is this your first time below 120? like you're not from around these parts. Don't you know who I am?" uh, um, Knox again. He is actually helping in that moment, but he's doing it in such an obnoxious way that it's just going to piss Shirley off even more, and he doesn't seem to see that.
Yeah, but I think he's less concerned with Shirley in that moment than it not start a fight.
Yeah, he better start getting more concerned with Shirley.
And also, I like Knox going to Hank, I owe you one, and Hank just going, you both do.
Yeah. Yeah, Hank's fed up this episode. He's having a rough day.
Hank has just totally run out of F's to give at this point.
I don't blame him. And the raider again threatens the mines on Shirley. So the mines. Yeah.
I think we ought to get for listener feedback. We ought to get a game of bingo going. How many times do they mention the mines in an episode? How many times does the Pez dispenser turn up per episode?
Well, so far only once, right?
So far only once. Yeah.
I do wonder if the hired hecklers might turn out to be a loose end, although, like, I guess on the one hand, they're hoping for more of this kind of work because they got paid and they also got released from detention, apparently. And on the other hand, let's see. I don't know how afraid they are of Sims, but that seems like a good deterrent if he tells you it'll be worse than detention if you talk.
Yeah.
So speaking of Sims, we get another shadowy solicitation. Sims and Bernard debrief in the relic room as Bernard contemplates the Pez dispenser, you just mentioned, that kicked off so much of this trouble last season. He knows what it is. It wasn't important, but it is now. Sims says all is calm. Bernard's play was successful and the Watchers are watching, but Sims believes he could help more if he were Bernard's shadow. Bernard says he needs Sims right where he is because the crisis isn't over and he better get home before he breaks his own curfew. So, yeah, funny that Bernard does know what a Pez dispenser is. How do you think he knows that?
Maybe it's in the order, like maybe, yeah, I don't know, but
It seems like a funny thing to include, but yeah, he knows it somehow.
Does he know what a Pez dispenser is, or does he just think he knows what a Pez dispenser is?
Well, I wonder also, like, so we know, there are some relic pieces of media, like we saw Meadows with that,
Etch-a-Sketch.
With Etch-a-Sketch, sure, but I was going to say the Wizard of Oz book. So maybe there's like old movies or commercials or something.
Well, yeah, where somebody's actually using a Pez dispenser as a Pez dispenser.
Yeah, maybe. But yeah, so Sims, he asks Bernard, was it important? This kind of implies to me that he has some knowledge. He knows Bernard has some knowledge of the before times.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does.
Do you think that Bernard ever intends to actually take on Sims as his shadow? What do you think he's going to do with the shadow thing?
No, I mean, I don't know if Bernard... He'll have to take somebody on, but he's never going to be Sims. He doesn't see Sims as being up to the challenge. He sees Sims as being very good at what he does, but basically just as hired muscle.
Right.
Basically. And so I still come back to what I said in the preview. If you had to ask me one thing that I absolutely think is going to happen this series, either Bernard is going to kill Sims or Sims is going to kill Bernard. And yeah, I'm more and more convinced that this is true because they're they just seem to be going in like different directions.
Yeah.
And there's this whole scene that I think we're going to talk about next between Sims and his other half, his wife. That's a really interesting little scene.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so I was just thinking, I wonder, first of all, yeah, Sims does not have the right disposition. We've seen him lose his temper too many times, and this needs to be someone cool-headed in situations like this. I do wonder why he doesn't consider Billings. Maybe he doesn't know him well enough. Do you think that he's trying to get Mary Meadows to be his shadow again? Do you think that's
Yes.
yeah?
Yeah, I do. Well, like I say, I think
Or is
there's
he
more.
pulling a Bernard and like gaslighting her in some way?
Well, I think there's more to their relationship than just mentor and mentee. I
Mhm.
think the way that those two conversations were staged, like I say, I think there was a little bit of a freestyle. I think they could have been like romantically involved at some point in the past.
Hmm.
Yeah,
We'll
they
see. We'll
just seem
see.
to have a more intimate relationship
Yeah. Yeah.
than Juliette had with Knox, or that
Maybe it's because, like, just, we know that as his shadow, she was privy to some of the secrets that he is privy to. And presumably, they're the only two who know certain things. Like, we know there's a janitor's closet and they know more than most people. But presumably, these are the only two who know about the other
yeah,
silos, I guess, about things like
yeah,
that.
quite
Yeah.
possibly.
And on his way home, Bernard sees some new graffiti, JL in a circle, which stands for Juliette Lives. So,
That was all very Hunger Games. That was giving very strong Hunger Games vibes there.
I guess stuff like that does happen in real lives.
Yeah.
So yeah, as you were talking about that scene back at home, Sims talks to his wife Camille, played by
The family
Alexandria.
Sims.
Yeah, played by Alexandria Riley, and he notes that Bernard didn't seem as worried as he would expect about not having enough help. So he's wondering if Bernard and Judge Meadows are working together, since they're both surprised. Since he and his wife are both surprised that Meadows even showed up to the speech, let alone spoke up. And Sims noted the looks the two exchanged. So I guess he does not know that Meadows was Bernard's former shadow. Do you think it's always a secret when the head of IT has a shadow?
I would assume so, yeah.
And you only find out when it's like, by the way, I mean, I guess you would have to set it up, right? To be like, if something happens to me, this is the next in line.
Yeah, I guess.
Hmm.
I guess. But you might want to. But maybe that's like none of judicial's business, because like all of these different departments within the silo do seem to be sort of quite, do seem to be worlds unto themselves to
Hmm.
a large extent.
Yeah.
And yeah, Camille just. Is it just me, or is Camille like playing Sims like a piano in this scene? It's just like,
She does seem to be pushing him about this whole shadow thing. Like, it
yeah,
seems like the drive's coming from her, especially.
yeah. It's all
Yeah.
very Lady Macbeth.
Yeah, you're not wrong. Because I always said I quite like Camille, but I'm like, back down, lady. Like, this is not going to go well. I also found it interesting that they had this conversation when she says Meadows didn't even know that she was alive when Camille worked in judicial. It feels like a conversation these two would have had before.
It does. It
But
does.
okay, fine, whatever. Exposition. Here we go. It's fine. Um, I did notice Sims wouldn't even take the beer she offered him. Even when he was planning on killing Marnes, he had no trouble drinking his beer. And now he's like so shook that he's like, no, 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 no.
Yeah.
So you just sit here and
Yeah.
think.
Yeah, it's weird. Yeah, it's weird.
Hmm.
Also, I hope we get to meet the brewer at some point. No, we seem to meet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I guess that's a real people do it in their houses, so I guess it's a relatively easy.
No. But if you look, they all
Yeah.
come in the same bottles. So
Right.
I think there is a brewery somewhere in the silo.
I mean, yeah, no, it must be brewed in the silo for sure. Yeah.
No, but
Yeah.
I don't think it's like homebrew.
Right. No.
I
I
think there is.
I understand what you're saying. I understand what
Yeah.
you're saying. I'm just saying that is out of the things that they can make in the silo deep underground. That's probably one of the easier things to make.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Okay, so this brings us up to the end of the episode when we're going to talk about two final interactions. First, let's switch back to Shirley, who is holding another meeting in the graffiti tunnel, and she says they should recruit people from the mids, teach them the hand signals they use to communicate. So we should remember hand signals. We're probably going to see that. Cooper interrupts them, tells them Knox sent him to follow Shirley, but he wants to join them. He says he will lie to Knox for them, for Juliette, who kept him alive that time she punched him in the face when he wasn't following instructions. Shirley starts to tell Cooper about the tape when Martha walks up, having followed Cooper there. She tells Shirley she doesn't know shit. They should stop riling things up before they get themselves killed because they're all sucky at being resistance operatives. Shirley asks Martha if she will join them in looking for more people interested in the truth and demanding answers, which Martha says they won't get. And when it comes to a fight, the raiders and deputies have all the weapons. Shirley thinks they can win some of them over to their side. Martha tells them about the JL graffiti she heard about on the radio. She doesn't think it's literally true that Juliette lives, but their hunt for the truth in Juliette's name keeps her memory and spirit alive. So, kind of seems like they're accidentally reforming the Flame Keepers here.
Yes, without sort of understanding the continuity. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and also
Yeah.
I love Walker's line. Shirley asks her, "How did you find us?" I just followed this genius because she's right. They are no good as like undercover resistance operatives.
Yeah.
And yeah, if this rebellion is going to succeed, it's going to need somebody other than Shirley to run it, and that's not a strike against Shirley.
No.
She's just not built for this.
Yeah, it's the same as Sims, you know. Well, I will say Shirley's heart is more in the right place than Sims's heart, but they're both just a little too hot-headed.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Cooper was Juliette's shadow, and Juliette was Knox's shadow. Do we think Cooper is Knox's shadow now because Knox is bossing him around? I mean, but I guess Knox bosses everyone
Knox
around.
bosses everybody around.
Yeah, I hope that Cooper is Knox's shadow because
he seems a little bit inexperienced to beat Knox's shadow.
Yeah,
seems,
okay, but he was the one training to take over the the maintenance of the what's it called, the generator. Do you think that Knox accidentally radicalized Cooper by getting him to listen to their rhetoric? Because he had him follow her, he was listening to what she said.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, maybe, but it just... I get where you're coming from, Shirley, but this is not a very convincing plan.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good thing Martha gets involved because she's a bit... She thinks things through a bit more.
Yeah.
So this brings us to our final interaction of the episode. Meadows says she went to the speech to watch Bernard fail, but his performance today made her doubt her doubts about him and her doubts about his political prowess. He says he gave the people a reason to believe in a miracle, and it's also harder for someone to tell a different story now. And worst case scenario, there's always brute force. Meadows points out that giving people something to believe in works much better. He says that's why he needs her, tells her about the new JL graffiti popping up, and then Meadows pours out the rest of her booze, says that for the first time in 25 years, she wants a clear head, and she says that she will help him for the heat tape that she asked for because she wants her shot outside as well. Fine.
The look on Bernard's face when she says she wants to go outside, it's just like, huh? What?
Why? You don't like living? Yeah. Yeah,
okay.
I mean, yeah.
Also, I wonder whether they're going to show it, because poor Judge Meadows is going to go through some hellacious withdrawal, I would think. I mean, had like a major alcohol problem for 25 years.
Yeah. Yeah. As you said, she did look a little rough, but yeah, maybe she's going to have some sleepless nights. They did show us that she, or is it going to magically disappear? Just
like Walker's agoraphobia.
Yeah, exactly. Agoraphobia, yeah. But they do show us how smart and observant she is because, like, for instance, she realized about the hecklers. She was like, "Oh, those were hired, right?" He's like, "Oh yeah, of course." You know. She calls it, yeah, as you said, the tape story ludicrous, but it's the best he could do given the situation. Um, and she asks him, "Do you want my help? Because I'm the only other person who's been in that vault." So that confirms that. And he says, interestingly, "Well, it's because you're the only other person that I will listen to." So it shows, at least he's telling her she's the only person he has respect for. But then again, Bernard can smile sweetly and lie straight to your face. So
It's true, he can. That's true, but I don't think he was lying then.
that, yeah, no, I agree. I mean, because there's probably a reason he chose her as his shadow in the first place.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do like this book edition because it's also, we have the same, I mean, sorry, the show edition, because we do have the same thing in the book where Bernard is at this point, like things are hitting the fan. And he's like, "Oh shit, I really do need a shadow because, you know, we need to
I
have
just need somebody
continuity."
else that can bear a bit of the burden.
Right. And, but also if something happens to him, there needs to be continuity.
Yeah.
He needs to not leave, the silo rudderless without someone who knows the things that he knows. So I like this. Yeah. And it doesn't, they don't explain in the book why he doesn't have a shadow at this point, other than just like vaguely, he can't trust anyone, which I buy into. Bernard is not a trusting person, but I do like this edition. It also gives a way for them to talk about things out loud, which is important in a TV show versus a book.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then that vault, of course, that they're talking about is the room we saw him in at the start of the episode, and the door that Solo says he'd kill Juliette for trying to open in the other silo. So interesting. So it means Solo is in there with that book and who knows what else as well, and the monitor and whatever. I think next week the story's going to start switching back and forth between the two locations, right?
Yeah, I think so.
I think that's what they said at Comic-Con.
Yeah.
But there better be some Lucas next week, okay?
You got through almost the entire episode.
I mean, come on. I want an opening scene in the mines with Lucas and Patrick and Danny, and they formed like a nerds club down there. They're making hacking plans. They're all computer
I've just
people.
got this idea of like them as a little like a cappella group now within the
Sure, they can get a
barbershop
fourth.
quartet. Yeah.
There's a character who works in the mines in the book. It's called Rafe, and I would love if Rafe showed up and he can be their fourth in their quartet.
Dum dum dum.
Do you have any more thoughts about this episode?
No, like I say, it was a really strong episode. Just slightly let down by one.
The agoraphobia
hole,
thing.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, same. I hope they handle the alcohol differently because people need to know you don't just like magically get over things overnight.
Yeah.
No. Well, we will be back here every week to track that progress and break down each episode as they're released. If you enjoyed listening to this and feel like you got something out of it, the best ways that you can help us are to share this episode with other people you think might be interested, who are into Silo or should be into Silo. And you can also really help us out by leaving a positive review wherever you're listening. It's a small thing to do, but you can't believe how much it helps us, actually. We want to hear your thoughts and theories about the show. We're going to be doing periodic mailbag episodes to discuss what the community is thinking. So please do send your thoughts to woolshiftuspodcast@gmail.com. You'll find that link in the show notes. And of course, you can find us also on Discord and social media. The Discord has dedicated forums with separate chats per episode and book spoiler discussion as well, a separate chat for that. And Luke now responds when you tag him on Discord.
Yeah, I'm trying to be. I've turned over a new leaf.
Uh-huh.
I'm reformed.
Yeah. Yeah, so in your feedback, by the way, you can send book spoiler feedback, but then I will only discuss that in the Spoilercast episodes because we are keeping the sanctity of Luke and other non-readers' knowledge about this story sacred. And as I said, this week's spoilercast discussion is going to be about the silo system and the books at its backbone. So there we can talk more openly about that book, The Order, that we saw in this episode and how it relates to the Pact and the rest. Supercast and Patreon subscribers will have access to that and also breakdowns of the silo books and short stories, the season 1 spoilery rewatch episodes, extra interviews with Hugh Howey with full book spoilers, and weekly spoilercasts and show guides as this season continues. And I would like to shout out a big thank you and welcome to 2 new Silazins this week, Adrienne M. and Tom P. Thank you so much. Can't wait to hear your thoughts and theories as we go forward. There's also, by the way, a new season pass option that allows those listeners who aren't interested in the regular subscription to just get those things that I list above for a one-time fee. There's a season 1 in books or just season 2 or a combo option available. Subscribers, though, do get access to all of that, plus additional episode like extra seasonal specials. And we're already discussing our winter holiday special, plus additional Howie book breakdowns, Doom book breakdowns, and other stuff. So you'll find links in the show notes with all that information. So yeah, we've already discussed our winter holiday plans. Do you want to tell the people what that is?
Yeah, so last year we did all the adaptations of It's a Wonderful Life. If you subscribe to the podcast anywhere, that should be in your feed if you want to go back and listen to it. And in particular, share my trauma over the abomination that was Clarence.
Best 1990 movie ever.
The most 1990 movie ever. So this year we are doing the various adaptations, both the more book faithful adaptations and the somewhat looser adaptations of It's a Christmas a Christmas Carol.
It's a Christmas Life. Yeah,
It's a Christmas Life. It's A Christmas Carol, which is one of my favorite, not just one of my favorite Christmas books, but one of my favorite books. Full stop. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah. So we're doing a whole ton of movies. So we are already planning and working on that. And there's going to be 2 public episodes. So one, as you said, that's just like the more straight up adaptations, and another that's the twists. And there's going to be another 3rd episode for subscribers that's about with an audio drama of the story that Dickens did before that. That was kind of like a practice run for A Christmas Carol. But before that, has already started last week as this is released. David is leading weekly breakdowns of Dune Prophecy in the Lorehounds feed, which I'm joining him for. And there is pre-Dune Prophecy coverage also ramping up to that on the Lorehounds feed. And you'll also find some here. Actually, Luke, David and I recently recorded for the first part of our Dune book breakdown, and we talked a lot about the Doom Prophecy during that recording. So I'm just pulling that out and leaving that as a preview episode, along with a breakdown of it's 40 pages. Is that a novella or a short story? But anyway, of a 40-page story that's the last written piece of book material leading into the timeline of Dune Prophecy. So check both the Lorehounds feed and this feed for Dune stuff. Also, Luke and you and I are going to be releasing some Dune book breakdown while we're doing Silo, just giving a taste. We'll be continuing that series after Silo is over. Yeah, and also lots of other stuff happening on the Lorehounds feed, of course. There was just a DC All-In Comics episode released as this is being recorded. The Agatha wrap-up Coven personality test. Of course, also do check out my podcast, the Star Wars Canon Timeline Podcast, which is an experiment in form where I'm trying to do the entire Star Wars Canon timeline in timeline order. So wish me luck and follow along with my journey. We've got Ramblers Rising. So Radioactive Ramblings is doing Red Rising series, a few chapters at a time. Never Mind the Music is combining music with psychology and how they interact. And Luke, tell us about It Could Be Said.
So It Could Be Said is a podcast I do with 2 friends from university, Will Cooling and Simon Alvey. we don't have a regular schedule as such. We just sort of pod as we build up topics to talk about. We have to record our reaction to the US presidential election, which I am stealing myself for because that will be somewhere between a podcast and group therapy. But we talk about British politics, we talk about international politics, we talk about sport, culture, and whatever else interests us, basically.
Yeah. Okay. Any final thoughts before we go?
No, I'm really looking forward to episode 3. This whole not watching ahead thing, I'm down with it. I really am. But it was so tempting this week. It was so tempting.
Well, you can watch it immediately after we stop recording.
Yeah.
So we will be back in your ears for next week's episode 3 breakdown, and even sooner for subscribers or season pass holders with the spoiler casts. And if we get enough material in, then we'll have a mailbag episode in the meantime too. Until then, what happens in the down deep stays in the down deep.
Why choose a Sleep Number smart bed?
Can I make my side softer?
Can I make my side firmer? Can we sleep cooler?
Sleep Number does that. Cools up to 8 times faster and lets you choose your ideal comfort on either side, your Sleep Number setting. And now, during our Black Friday sale, save 50% on the Sleep Number limited edition smart bed, plus free home delivery when you add a base. And Cyber Monday. To find a store near you, visit sleepnumber.com.